Hello lovely people, I'm Kathryn and welcome to this week's episode of the coverlet of comfort. Now this is the last week of July. Next week will be a new prompt, and I've been stitching away this blanket stitch on around my hexagons that I showed you last week, and I'll just give you a little scan. So I've filled the whole area except for along here, which I'll talk about in a bit. But I was about to finish this last area here, and I thought maybe it's useful if I just share with you a little bit how I deal with joining, interlocking, and so forth when you get into those little tight corners. Here and there you get these weird little shapes, like here you see that's quite pointy. But I don't think it matters. I think in the overall scheme of things it still looks beautiful. I'm really happy with it. But yeah, so it's Monday evening. I want to do what I'm going to do along here after I've joined it. So I'm going to do this with you now, and then tomorrow I can go on and join it to the rest of the coverlet of comfort and then film the rest of it, showing what I'm going to do along there. So I'm doing a little segment now. Working nights, well, evening, 6:30, not really nights. So I've done my first, sorry I keep clanging something there. What is that? I don't know. Oh, and I've just picked, these are not the first ones, I have already eaten 2 more tomatoes from my tomato plants. Anyway, they were just there. Random tomatoes. So I will carry on with looking for my needle with this little area, and probably edit here and there so I don't go on for hours because I've got other things to show you. So I went round, just to recap, so I went round the ones with the buttons with my tan coloured thread, this one, and then I went round my Granny's Flower Garden clusters with my cream thread. These are all the threads I've got left. And then I went around my individual little hexes with this gold colour. And then I filled in the gaps here and there with whatever I thought, whatever I fancied. So I'm just getting some of this in my needle, some of the gold. Okie dokie. Apologies for my fingers, I have been eco-printing. I won't say any more than that. That's why I have no rings on and my fingernails are a bit grubby. But anyway, so I've done my first round like I said, so I'm going to start now with my second round. So I just come up at the bottom of one of the legs and then I go under the leg to start. And so this will just be usual, normal, as I showed you last week to start with. So taking my blanket stitch under the leg and round we go. So this is all the same. Now one thing is, when I see myself coming up to, I'm opposite this area here, I try and make sure the leg that I'm going to make here falls in between those 2 legs. Now this, you can drive yourself crazy trying to get it all, perfect. That's not what we do here. But do you see there, I've sort of gone between those 2 legs. It just makes it easier later to make a more natural shape. But what I would strongly recommend that you do is, when you're working on your own stitching, if you're doing this stitching, is to just kind of observe what's happening. Think about the current stitch that you're making, and as you're working closer to adjacent stitches, these over here for example, just think about how the connections might happen and what kind of shapes you might make. So here these 2 legs are a little bit close together, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stitch here for starters, and then I'm going to go through 2 legs. Because, as I showed you last week, you go through a leg, you make the stitch, through a leg, make the stitch. But then, once you start getting into these more awkward areas, you can modify that. That's only a guideline, it's not a rule. And I think it looks really nice that all the shapes are bigger and smaller and so on. One thing to just bear in mind if you plan on using your coverlet of comfort as a quilt, you don't want to get too long and loopy with your stitches because it might catch on things. Okay, so I've come back round to where I started, so I'm just going to go through behind that first leg that I came up from to finish off that round, and then I'm going to come back up at the base of this leg, the closest leg to me again, and go under it with my needle and carry on round. You see how they're getting bigger, and I'll let them get bigger until the point where I think they're too big, and then I'll do, like I did before, I'll do 2 stitches, 2 blanket stitches between legs, and if they're too close together I'll go through 2 legs, if that makes sense. So you don't always have to just keep going, you know, under one leg make a stitch, under one leg make a stitch. Right, so I'm coming under that leg now, and you see here I've got this leg of the other stitch coming down the other side. So what I'm going to do is just go through that with my needle and then go through the next leg on the round I'm working on with my needle, and so that completes that shape. Now that's not a hexagon anymore, it's some weird shape, but in the grand scheme of things it all looks fine, and it just connects those 2 lines of stitching. And so now again here's another leg of the opposing stitching, so I think it makes the most sense to come through that and then come through that. And now here, this leg of the cream is a bit further away, but I can audition, I can just lay that there like that, and even like that, and do I think that makes a reasonable shape? Yes I do, so I'm going to go under that leg as well, and then back under that leg, and now I'm in open space again, so I'll go back to just doing my blanket stitch. Sorry, it's getting a bit twisty because of going round and round. So then I'll just do my normal stitching into that open space, make a stitch, come under that leg, make a stitch, come under that leg, and now again I'm close to my opposing. When I say opposing, you know what I mean, I don't mean they're arguing with each other, I mean they're opposite this cream stitch. So I'm going to go under that leg and then under that leg. And then again. So you have to just decide for yourself how, you know, whether it's close enough that you can do that or whether you can get another stitch in there first. Just all depends, but I found this really enjoyable doing this, the stitching on this, because of making all these little decisions as you go along. So you see this motif now is linked to the stitching around this motif. So now I'm here. Is that too far? No, I think that's okay. I'm going to go under that leg as well. And there you see I've missed a leg out, and that makes, I think they're cute because look, I hope you can see that it's made a little heart shape. But if I went up to that leg there and then down to there, it would make awkward shapes. So I'm just auditioning, and these little heart shapes have cropped up here and there, and I really like them. So you just see that, you know, that's something that just happened and I noticed. So now I can go up to there. I think I will go up to there. So this isn't me saying do this, do that. This is me saying look at what's happening, and these are the various things that you can do, if that makes sense. So now I'm here. So I could just go straight up to there again, and I've got these pointy things going on. Or I think what I will do is take another blanket stitch, because this is quite a big space. So just take a blanket stitch into that space and then go under my leg. Oops. And then go on again. stop doing that. So now I've come back round to the beginning of that round, so I'm going to go through behind where I came out. I kind of tuck my needle in behind so that it makes a continuous line, you know, that you don't see, but it's just me being super finicky. So there we go, so that's that little motif stitched around, and it's joined here and it's joined here. So now I've got an open space in there that needs filling in, and I've got an open space here, and I've got a little open space here. So since I'm up here anyway, where am I when I say I'm up here? I'm up here somewhere. No, I'm right down here. Since I'm down here, I'll just come up behind this leg, the closest leg to me, just to use this bit of thread up. And this is partly how I've been deciding what colour thread to use. You know, if I've got thread left in the needle, then I just stitch on wherever there's space. I mean, sometimes you have to finish off because you've run out of space, but whoops. So I'll come up into here, and then you see I've got a shape here forming. So I'm going to go under that leg, so you can see what I'm doing. And that closes that space off, and then naturally it wants me to go around this way. The cloth is telling me, the stitching's telling me to go that way. So now again I have to decide, do I want to take a back stitch in here? I think it's too tight and it will make a, you have to kind of visualize it. If you took that back stitch, whoops, stay in there needle, what sort of shape would it leave? It would leave a kind of kidney bean shape. I think I prefer to go under the leg of that cream, and maybe even that one as well. And then I can go back into that leg, the previous leg of the gold, and there I've made a lovely closed in shape. So now I can decide, do I go back and carry on that way, or do I carry back round there? And I think I'm going to carry on back round there. And the stitch under the leg, I haven't got much thread left. I'm just hooking under wherever I think is a good place to keep the shapes pleasing. You know, they're not necessarily hexagons, all of them, but they're pleasing to look at. And then here I've got my line of invisible baste, and I don't want to go past that because I need to leave room to join. So I can probably just squeeze one last stitch out of there, and then I'm going to shoot through there to the back just to finish that shape off. Oops, my thread's divided a bit. There we go. Just finish that off on the back. So I hope that's helpful if you've been doing this and, you know, you've come across these little joiny issues and you haven't worked out what to do. We've been worrying about it. I don't want anybody to worry. So then I'll just come back up here with a different colour. Probably I might do the cream there because I've got cream and cream. So if I might use my cream and just go around in there in exactly the same way, just making those little decisions as I go along. Here I might bring some of the tan in just for this little area, and then I don't know what colour I'll use there, whether I'll carry on with the cream or, you know, it'll be different for you anyway. So I just got those three little areas to finish, and then that's all my blanket stitching finished. And then the other thing I want to do before I join, and I don't think I need to show you, well, I'll show you it when I've done it, is in the middles, which is me, I want to do some green seed stitch. So I've chosen some various bits of green. They're over there, but you know what green looks like out of my orch, just different shades of green. And I'm just going to do some little green seed stitches in each of my gold centres. And I'll show you that. I'll sit there this evening and do that, and I'll show you that tomorrow when I'm done. And then once I've done that, and my thinking behind that is, sorry, there's a big clangy thing going by, that this is me in the centre of nature, you know, all the other kingdoms of the natural world. And I'm just thinking that if I put the little green seed stitches, green seeds, that's nature in me. So it's me in nature and nature in me. It's about integrating. And also it will kind of blend them visually into the background. That's my thought process on that. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'm going to join this to the coverlet, to the main coverlet, along this edge with the lace trim which I've left, this crocheted lace. And then when I've joined, I'll come back and tell you what I'm going to do in that gap that I've left down there. But that will be in no time at all for you. For me, it'll be tomorrow. So yeah, so I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to go and eat my tomatoes and probably something more substantial as well for my tea. So I'll see you in a bit. Okie dokie, so I have finished all my stitching. I did the green seed stitching like I described earlier in each of the gold hexy middles. Just show you quickly. There we go. And then I've stitched that piece onto the side of my coverlet. So all I did was I pinned all the backing either side out of the way to start with, and then I stitched just next to the crochet lace. I mean, obviously this will be different for yours, but just to tell you how I dealt with it. So then I stitched a little running stitch in cream all the way along the edge of this bit of lace, just into the cloth. And then I went over to the back again, got my pins out, trimmed back the backing on the main body of the coverlet, and then folded under the edge of the backing on the new bit, and whip stitch all the way along. So that's all attached and ready to go. So my idea for this gap that I've got along this edge here that I left was to stitch some words, and my inspiration comes from this little book that one of you lovely people sent me some time ago. It's made by an artist. Her label's in it somewhere. I thought I saw her label. Where did I see that? She's called Trisha something. I thought it was labelled. Here we go. Made by Trisha Smoot or Smout in Brisbane. But I don't think it was Trisha who sent me it. I think it was someone else who's obviously bought that, or is a friend of hers. I don't entirely remember. But it's a little accordion book. It's absolutely beautiful. And in it are all kinds of quotes upon the theme of the web of life, which just fits perfectly with this month's theme, I think. So yeah, Martin Luther King, Chief Seattle, Albert Schweitzer, all kinds of people. John Muir, Albert Einstein, Gerald Durrell. So what I've done is I've gone through there and I've chosen not whole quotes but just some phrases, which I'll show you in case you want to use the same ones. Come here, I can't pick them up. And I've written them on these little strips of paper in about the size that I'll be stitching them. And I kind of measured this was 36 inches, I think. And then I got 36 inch worth of strips, and I wrote them on, and I had a fiddle about and a play. So now I can see, I've now gone out of shot, but they'll come into shot in a minute. I can now see that they'll all fit along there. Do you see? And so I can use these rather than drawing on my cloth, which I don't really like to do unless I have to. I can use these as a kind of template. So before I do that, let me just run through them in case you want to use them. It's difficult, or I suppose I could stitch the person's name on the cloth, but I don't think I will. I think I've taken them so out of context that it hardly matters, you know, they've just become phrases. But just so you know, this phrase, complex tapestries, comes from a quote by Gerald Durrell. Maybe it's nice for you to hear the full quote, if I can find them. Bear with. There we are. So, the great ecosystems are like complex tapestries. A million complicated threads interwoven make up the whole picture. Nature can cope with small rents in the fabric. It can even, after a time, cope with major disasters like floods, fires and earthquakes. What nature cannot cope with is the steady undermining of its fabrics by the activities of man. And that's by the great naturalist Gerald Durrell. So I've just taken the words complex tapestries from that one. A single garment of destiny comes from a quote by Martin Luther King, which reads, where is it? Oh dear. I don't know what that is. Sorry about that. Oh, it's that little dog that makes the noise like that even when it's absolutely fine. Fear not. Martin Luther King. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied to a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So that was that one. A strand in the web of life is Ted Perry. And that is, man did not weave the web of life, he is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. So there, you know, it doesn't actually say a strand in a web of life. I've paraphrased, artistic license. Your place in the family of things was my inspirational phrase for this whole month, and that's Mary Oliver, if you remember. In Balance with Nature is from John Zerzan. That's not somebody I'm familiar with. Or somebody that I can now find in this book. It's just a wonderful little thing, this. But it's got two sides to it, so where is it? There it is. If we once and for so long lived in balance with nature and each other, we should be able to do so again. So that's that, in balance with nature. All things share the same breath. That is Chief Seattle. That's near the front, I think, yes. All things are bound together, all things share the same breath. And then finally, shining together as one, is a quote from John Muir. He's got two in here. He appears twice, but not on that side of the book. He had this one here: when one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world. But this particular quote about shining is from another, here we go. When we contemplate the whole globe as one great dewdrop, striped and dotted with continents and islands, flying through space with all the other stars, all singing and shining together as one, the whole universe appears as an infinite storm of beauty. So that's where that phrase comes from. So hopefully that's enough information for you if you want to go and look them up somewhere online and use some of them. But obviously, if you want to do words, feel free to choose your own, of course. So my plan is to stitch these using just straight stitches, and I've kind of written them in the same way that I plan to stitch them, but as long as, excuse me, as long as they're about the same size, that's fine. Sorry, I just had my lunch and I've got a toast crumb or something stuck, I think. But if you do this and you write them on the little strips of paper like this, then I would encourage you to lay them on. I've numbered them so I remembered what order I wanted them in, and just make sure of your spacing. And then you could either pin them all, I mean I'm not going to pin them there obviously because I need to stitch there, maybe not obviously. You could either pin them all on, or I think what I'll do is pin them one at a time. See, I've laid them on and I've got more of a gap at that end that you can't see up there. So I'm just going to adjust them so that I leave a little gap at each end and a little gap in between. And that should be okay. So then once I've got my spacing, it's about 1/4 of an inch apart. That'll be fine. So I can take them all off except for the first one. And then I'll move it over so you can see what I'm doing. So then move that over. So I've got number one is complex tapestries, just checking you can see. So then I can pin that. I could either pin it up there or down here. I think I'll pin it up there actually. One of my little applique pins. I expect one is enough. Because the other thing I find when I'm stitching words, sometimes I spell them wrong because your stitching has a different rhythm to how you write. And I sometimes miss letters out and things like that. So I've chosen this dark rusty brown floss. Hopefully that's enough to do the whole lot. Otherwise I could do it in different colours, I guess. I've got 2 strands in my needle. So now I'm going to fight with the rest of the coverlet. It's a bit awkward on my desk. I'll just do one with you and then I'll go and do the rest off camera. So just following along from my little bit of paper, so I want to start somewhere here with my letter C, and I'm going to just eyeball sort of the middle of the space, I think. I don't mind if it's wonky and not straight. If you wanted it to be super straight, of course you could draw yourself a guideline or something. And so I'll start with my letter C. It's a little bit awkward because of the way I'm sitting, and I don't want to keep turning it and making you dizzy. But I'm just going to... That's not handy, is it? I'm just going to do all my letters with this little alphabet that I think I've shown you before when we did home. I think I'm going to stab stitch. I'm going to have to turn it a little bit, apologies. I made it for my Forager's Journal last year. I messed about on a bit of paper with a pencil until I found ways of making all the letters with straight lines. So there's my letter C. And I'll just go ahead and do this, and I don't think I need to talk you through it. So I've got another funny Fred story. A weird little thing there. Probably a Fred hair. One of my neighbours, my next door but one neighbour. Just to say, I'm just keeping an eye on my writing there, just to make sure that I don't go, way bigger, because then the rest won't fit, kind of thing. So I'm just keeping an eye on my piece of paper while I stitch. Yeah, my neighbour next door but one was outside talking to my next door neighbour the other day, and he was going by. Actually, I'd been out and I came back and I had some stuff with me. I've been out in the car and I had armloads of stuff and Stella, and I'd taken a cardigan with me because I thought it might be chilly, but it wasn't. Anyway, so I draped the cardigan over my shoulder bag, my handbag, because I didn't have a hand to carry it in, and it had apparently fallen off anyway, so that's why he came a-knocking, or he didn't come a-knocking, he came down to the garden with, and he said, "Is this your cardigan?" And he said, he knew it was mine because it was red, and yeah, I wear bright colours. And then he said, "Oh, I've been meaning to tell you about your bloomin' cat," but he said it with a smile. He does love Fred. I'll just say that up front. This was by no means a complaint. He said the other day he'd bought a shrub for his garden from the garden centre, and he dug a hole ready to put the shrub in, and he turned round to get the shrub, and when he turned back, Fred was squatting in the hole doing a poo. Luckily he does love him. And I said to him, "What are you doing then?" He said he just looked me straight in the eye, finished what he was doing, climbed out of the hole and walked away. He didn't even have the courtesy to cover it over. Yeah, so of course I said, well, he was doing you a favour, he was fertilising it for you. But it's a good job that he likes him, because I know it's not very nice for people that don't like cats when other cats come and do that in your garden. But yeah, I thought it was funny. My neighbour thought it was funny, and luckily the neighbour who, the chap who was planting the shrub, my other neighbour, also thought it was funny. But what a little monkey. Now I'm just keeping an eye, because I do feel I am getting bigger because I've turned it, so my perspective is not great. But because I've got that there, I can then make adjustments as I go along and just make sure that the whole phrase fits in its allotted space, and that I spell it correctly, like I said. Okay, I stopped talking and just stitched because it was going really wonky, and apparently I need to concentrate when I'm stitching letters. So I've just got the S to do, but you see I've gone slightly longer. I'm going to have to pay attention to that in future ones. So I'll just do the S, Plus I did have to keep turning it because I've got it all bunched up here to my right, and yeah, it would be easier on my lap. So hopefully I've shown you enough. So when I've done this S, before I take my label off, let's just do the S first. Isn't it funny how I can stitch? I guess it's because I don't stitch words very often, and they're quite specific rather than other kinds of stitching that I'm more used to doing. It's less specific, I don't know. See, I've gone quiet again. How to shut Kathryn up, make us stitch letters. Right, so I've just got the bottom bar of the S to do. So this alphabet that I've drawn out is all straight lines, you know, the O is a square. I do little triangle shapes for the rounds of the P's and the B's and the R's and all that. But, you know, you can obviously create your own alphabet if you like. He's got a bee in his bonnet about something, that little dog. So I think what I'll do, I'll just park my needle like that and try not to put my hand on it. Because then I'll get my next one, which is quote number 2, a single garment of destiny. And then I had about 1/4 of an inch between them, so that will want to go there. And I think between the quotes, just to break them up, I'm going to put a little cross stitch. So I'll pin that one on first. That might need 2 pins because it's a bit longer. This is just a scrap of paper out of my scrap box, but obviously choose a paper that's thin enough that you can get pins through it. There we go. And then I'm going to do a little vertical and horizontal cross rather than an X. So I'm just going to have a look at that gap there between my two. I'm just eyeballing that gap. And your spacing and all that might be different, it's just to give you ideas. And so I'll come up somewhere there and then just do a cross like that. Just to mark that it's the end of a quote and the beginning of a new one. Do you see? Do you see? So I'll do my quote and a cross all the way along. I'll go and do that sitting on the sofa so that it's not so awkward, and I'll be back to show you when I've done. Okay, here's my finished, well, finished as of the end of July. It's not finished. Before I zoom in and show you the details, and before I forget, I just want to mention anyone who is going up to the NEC this weekend to the Festival of Quilts. One of the lovely members of our community, a lady called Jill Moore, has been shortlisted for the Quilters Guild Graduate Bursary Award. And she is exhibiting her work along with some colleagues of hers. Now, she will be in Hall 7 on the right-hand side wall. And there will be 9 of them, and it will be signposted, she says. And she was asked to choose some contemporary artists to follow during her course. And she named me as one of her inspirations. So if you're at the Festival of Quilts in Birmingham, do go into Hall 7 and look for the Quilters Guild Graduate Bursary Award stand, and track Jill down and say hello from me as well. I'm not going this year. I went last year, if you remember, to see Judy Martin, but it's not really my thing, big crowds and, you know, all that. And also there's Stella, you know, it's not Stella friendly, and anyway, I'm not going. But if you are, Hall 7, Jill Moore, the Quilters Guild Graduate Bursary Award stand. Do look for it and say hello. Okay, I'm glad I remembered. Actually, I have to thank Chrissy for reminding me that it was festival this weekend. So I can't get, well, that's it from standing back here. Going back a bit further, there we go. It's about 1 metre square, 39 inches. It's not completely square, but, you know, there or thereabouts. I'll zoom you in and show you the text in a minute. Fred and Stella are having a little wrestle because they think it's tea time. But I hope you can see now how that pale colour on the left now balances the Cantha and the applique on the right, which is what I was hoping for. And also the kind of floral motifs on the right are sort of echoed by the shapes of the Granny's Flower Gardens. So yeah, so I'm pleased with how it's coming along. Obviously there's more to come yet, and next month will be a new prompt for August. Sorry, next week. It will be next month as well, but you know what I mean. So I'll just go slowly so you don't get seasick and just show you my words. It occurred to me as I was stitching that one of the challenges when you're stitching text is that as a right-hander I tend to stitch from right to left, but of course when we write from left to right, if that makes sense. So what I found myself doing as I sort of got into the flow, I'll angle slightly. Excuse me, can you just save the bedlam just for 5 minutes please? Thank you. Mummy's working. Sorry about that. I started, my hand's coming in, don't be scared. I started holding it sideways, so this way, with my template pinned on, you know, obviously in the right place, but then stitching sideways, because it doesn't really matter that they're letters as long as you make the shapes. So, you know, that you kind of have to learn to manage these larger cloths as you go along, and because it was text, yeah, so that's how I managed to do it. So I shall give you a very slow scan from the bottom to the top. So complex tapestries, a single garment of destiny. I don't know why I'm reading it to you, I'm sure you can read it yourselves. A strand in the web of life. Your place in the family of things. In balance with nature. All things share the same breath, and right up at the top there, shining together as one. So yeah, I'm pleased to have those words. I think the last time I did words was in the home block back in February, was it? Yeah, I think so. So yeah, I'm very happy, and I'm also happy with the weight of that colour, if that makes sense. That's slightly darker brown. I can't get back any further. So there we go. So that's it for July. I hope you've enjoyed this month. I must say I have really enjoyed it, everything about it, the English paper piecing and the other way of making hexagons and the blanket stitch and finishing off with the text. Yeah, it's been really an enjoyable one. So hopefully next month will be enjoyable as well. And I bet you're all looking forward to next Wednesday, as am I, and then I'll share it with you. And meanwhile, thank you so much for watching and happy stitching. And don't forget, if you're interested, natural dyeing with nettles this Friday in the Park Home Live slot. So otherwise, I'll see you next time. Lots of love and kisses. Bye bye.